Absolutely. Here's an expanded 1,000-word version of Part 1, The Trial Before the Stars, written in third person. Cinematic style and perfectly fitting the HFY. Tone, Part 1, The Trial Before the Stars. Expanded E10 words. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was older than memory. Carved from an asteroid that circled a dying sun, it was said that every empire that had ever risen to the stars had once stood here, humbled before those who called themselves the Keepers of Order. Today, for the first time in centuries, a human stood at its center. Captain Elias Vance, Earth Federation Defense Command, stood alone on a circular platform of shimmering light. His hands were bound behind him in thin coils of plasma. The faint hum of the containment field was the only sound that broke the still air. Above and around him, tier upon tier of alien delegates filled the amphitheater creatures of crystal gas scale, and shadow each representing a civilization older and stronger than Earth had ever dreamed of being. Elias was painfully aware of how small he looked beneath the vaulted dome of starlight. His uniform was torn and blackened. One shoulder bore the mark of a plasma burn hastily sealed with medfoam. Yet he stood straight, chin up, as if he were still on the bridge of his ship. The High Chancellor Taverin presided from the upper dais, a figure of translucent crystal whose inner facets glowed faintly blue with every word. Two lesser races, that shifting light was hypnotic. To Elias, it was just the glare of another conqueror. Taverin's voice was amplified through a lattice of translators, echoing in hundreds of tongues at once. Captain Vance of Cell 3, you are brought before this council to answer for your crimes. The charge: willful aggression against a recognized peacekeeping fleet of the Galactic Concord. How do you plead? Elias looked up at the crystalline judge. His throat was dry, his body exhausted, but his eyes, gray and sharp as a storm, held steady. I plead not guilty, he said. His words, translated into a dozen dialects, rippled across the hall like a shockwave. Whispers filled the tiers. Some species hissed, others flickered in agitation, still others simply pulsed in confused color patterns. The idea that a human would speak with defiance instead of supplication seemed almost absurd. Taverin's light dimmed, then flared a Gantz version of a sigh. Not guilty? The record shows your fleet destroyed to council cruisers, seized a diplomatic outpost, and violated the non-contact directive for developing worlds. Explain yourself. Elias raised his bound hands as far as the restraints allowed. You've got it backward, he said. I didn't invade you. You invaded us. The murmurs rose into a low roar. A species from the Varan cluster unfolded its wings in outrage. Another, from the Lyth Enclave, thumped its shell against the bench for silence. It took nearly a minute for the hall to quiet again. That is a serious accusation, Taverin said, each word edged with crystalline chill. Earth was classified as a developing civilization under Article 7. No council member would violate such a decree. Elias' jaw tightened. His voice grew quieter, but the calm in it was more dangerous than any shout. Then tell that to the ships that burned Snow Paulo. Tell that to the soldiers you dropped in Chicago under your so-called reclamation protocols. The holorecorders that floated above him flickered. Every delegate could see the human's expression up close, the faint tremor in his lip, the suppressed fury. We saw your banners in our skies, he continued. We heard your languages in our cities. You said you came in peace, but your peace began with bombardment. You called it uplift. We called it invasion. A long silence followed. Even the translator drones seemed to hesitate before rendering his last word. Across the upper tiers, representative from the Meridian Collective Rosa, shimmering creature of light and tendrils. The Reclamation Initiative was a rogue operation, Captain, it said. Unauthorized by the full council. Your retaliation? Retaliation? Elias cut in. You sent orbital drones that vaporized half our defense satellites. You sterilized oceans in the name of containment. What did you expect us to do, Neil? And thank you? Gasps, clicks, hisses. Few in the chamber had ever seen a prisoner interrupt a delegate. The containment field pulsed a warning, tightening around him. But Elias didn't flinch. Taverin raised one crystalline hand. The murmur ceased instantly. You claim, the Chancellor said slowly, that humanity acted in defense. Yet records show your species captured a Council dreadnought and used it to attack a peacekeeping convoy. Elias met the Chancellor's glowing gaze. We didn't capture it, he said. We took it back. The delegates erupted again, a storm of sound booming, clicking, reverberating through the chamber's vaulted ceiling. The phrase "took it back" resonated strangely in every translation, carrying shades of rebellion and defiance. When order was finally restored, Tavarin's glow had dimmed to a cold violet. Why would a species of your stage risk annihilation? You could not hope to win. Elias gave a faint, humorless smile. Because we've already been through hell. We're not impressed by the threat of it anymore. He straightened as much as the restraints allowed, his boots scuffing against the platform. Maybe you don't understand what Earth is like. We fight hurricanes, volcanoes, diseases, our own mistakes. We survive because that's what we do. So when your fleets came, thinking we'd roll over, you miscalculated. Somewhere deep in the chamber, a translator clicked uncertainly, as though unsure whether to render the human's tone as pride or madness. You think this is a war crime, Elias went on. I think it's a warning. We're not your experiment. We're not your resource. You stepped onto our soil without asking, and you got burned. Tavarin's crystal facets refracted shifting shades of light, unreadable. Earth's retaliation resulted in the loss of thousands of lives across 5 systems. Do you feel no remorse? Of course I do, Elias said quietly. But remorse doesn't mean surrender. Every death, ours and yours, is on the hands of those who fired first. The Chancellor was silent for a long time. At last he spoke, almost softly. You speak as if you represent more than your species, Captain Vance. As if you believe humanity deserves a seat among the stars. Elias lifted his head. The faint light from the dome caught in his eyes. I don't believe we deserve anything, he said, but we've earned the right to be left alone. And if that's too much for your council to grant, then maybe you're not the civilization you think you are. For the first time since the trial began, Tavarin's glow dimmed completely, the crystal within him going dull. He regarded the human for several long seconds, then inclined his head. This council will reassess to deliberate. As guards moved to escort Elias from the platform, he glanced up at the tiers one last time. Hundreds of alien eyes stared down at him, some with anger, some with curiosity. A few with something that looked disturbingly like respect. In that moment, Elias Vance realized that his words had done more damage than any weapon. The council had come expecting to judge a criminal. Instead, they had been confronted by something far more dangerous, a human who refused to kneel, and above them all, the dying sun beyond the hall's transparent dome flickered once, casting its pale light across the chamber as if bearing silent witness to the beginning of something new, something unstoppable. End of Part 1. Part 2. The Day Humanity Fought Back continues the story of Earth's rebellion and the captured dreadnought. Absolutely. Here's the 1,000-word cinematic expansion of Part 2, The Day Humanity Fought Back. Written in the same HFY humanity, yeah. Tone and third-person epic narration style to continue directly from Part 1. Part 2, The Day Humanity Fought Back, expanded. 1,000 words. The first shot of the war wasn't fired from orbit. It began in silence, under a cloudless sky above the Atlantic Ocean. When the stars disappeared all at once, at first, people thought it was an eclipse. Then the power grids went dark. Then came the sound like thunder without end as something vast entered. Earth's atmosphere. That was the day the Galactic Council arrived. They didn't call it an invasion. The broadcast transmitted in hundreds of languages across every major network called it an intervention. Humanity, they said, had reached a technological threshold too dangerous to leave unsupervised. The Council's fleets came to protect Earth from itself, but protection came in the form of orbital bombardment. When the first reclamation, drones descended over Snow Paulo. They sterilized entire districts with plasma fire. Skyscrapers melted like wax. Over the Pacific, An alien carrier vessel deployed atmospheric filters that turned entire coastlines into shimmering glass. The Council called it pacification. Humans called it Day One of the War, the sparking the chaos. Earth's governments fell back on old instincts, panic argument, paralysis. Communication networks were shredded by electromagnetic interference. Satellites were jammed or destroyed. For 24 hours, the planet teetered between disbelief and extinction. Then, somewhere deep under Colorado, a low-ranking communications officer named Sergeant Iko Tanaka reconnected a damaged uplink to the orbital remains of an old defense satellite. It was ancient, decades out of date, but it worked. The first global message went out from a bunker, buried beneath a mountain. This is Earth Command. We are still here. We are fighting back. That was all it took. Within hours, civilian hackers hijacked traffic control networks to guide refugee convoys. Power engineers rerouted abandoned grids into emergency shelters. Amateur radio clubs became command centers. The world's chaos began to take shape, and its people began to fight in every city. Humanity's stubborn brilliance flared to life. Farmers in the Midwest used old-weather drones as improvised scouts. Mechanics in Berlin turned garbage trucks into armored carriers. Kids in Mumbai built jammers from broken microwaves to block alien drones. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for hope. They built it. The first victory on the fourth day? Something impossible happened. A Council strike vessel designation Vor-class cruiser, Levant, descended over Eastern Europe, intending to vaporize what was left of a rebel network. It never returned. For months afterward, the Council assumed it had been destroyed by a malfunction. What they didn't know was that humanity had captured it. The operation had been led by Captain Elias Vance, commander of the Earth's Federation ship Odyssey. His craft had been crippled during the first orbital skirmish, but he refused to abandon orbit. As debris from shattered satellites rained down, Vance's crew boarded the alien vessel using magnetic grapplers in sheer desperation. It was the first time humans had stood inside. Council ship, and it almost killed them. The corridors were alive. Shifting like muscle, the air itself vibrated with quantum feedback. Most of the boarding crew didn't make it out, but by the time the smoke cleared, the ship's command node pulsed under human control. Elias named the captured dreadnought the Independence. Learning to bite back for 2 months, the Independence disappeared. The Council assumed it was lost to deep space interference. In reality, it was hiding behind the moon, cloaked in electromagnetic silence. While thousands of engineers, scientists, and soldiers worked around the clock to understand its alien systems, they learned quickly. Too quickly, Earth's engineers discovered that the Council's biotech was programmable. Every ship, every drone, every weapon was bound by protocol and hierarchy. Human intuition, however, wasn't. They rewired the systems, bypassed security failsafes, and began experimenting. Within weeks, the Independence flew again, its core systems fused with human ingenuity. Where alien ships relied on predictable logic, the human modifications introduced chaos, improvisation, creativity. It was ugly. It was unstable. It was very human when the Council fleet returned to orbit. Expecting easy dominance, they found their own dreadnought waiting for them, and it was firing back. The Battle of Eartha. Battle of Earth lasted just under 40 minutes. But those 40 minutes changed the galaxy. Council Tactical A is calculated and immediate. 98.7% probability of victory. They had superior firepower, faster drives, and millions of years of experience in interstellar warfare. What they didn't have was unpredictability. Humanity fought like nothing they had ever faced. The Independence's plasma lances fired at angles no Council officer would ever approve. Civilian satellites were repurposed into kinetic projectiles, slamming into enemy holes like slingshot stones. Nuclear submarines, once meant to guard coasts, surfaced and launched missiles that rode the heat signatures of falling debris. Every strike, every maneuver, every act of defiance was driven by one purpose: to show that Earth was not theirs to claim. Elias, Vance commanded from the bridge, his voice calm amid chaos. Target the lead cruiser. Make them look at us. Make them see us. His crew obeyed, not because of rank, but because they believed in him and in what he represented. When the Independence rammed through the Council's flagship, half of its systems failed. The ship was burning, screaming through atmosphere, but it stayed locked on course. It wasn't strategy. It was something pure, rage, courage, and hope fused into a single impossible act. When the flagship exploded, shockwave rippled through the Council fleet's formation. Their precision collapsed. Their algorithms failed to adapt to the madness before them. One by one, they retreated. Humanity had won. The cost victory came at a terrible price. Entire cities were gone. Oceans boiled. Billions were displaced. But for the first time since the invasion began, the night sky over Earth was silent. The survivors emerged from shelters, scarred but unbroken. Across the world, people looked upward, not in fear, but in awe. The Council had come as gods. Now they fled like thieves. Captain Elias Vance broadcast one final transmission to the retreating fleet. To whoever's listening out there, this is Earth. We are done kneeling. That message traveled farther than anyone could have predicted. It was intercepted, translated, and shared across thousands of Council worlds. Species long subjugated by the so-called guardians of peace heard humanity's defiance and they remembered their own chains. Whispers began to spread. If the primitives of Sol 3 could defy the Council, maybe anyone could. The Independence resides in the weeks that followed. The Independence was repaired in orbit with whatever humanity could scavenge. Its hull, once sleek and alien, now bore crude steel plating and painted insignias of human flags side by side. Earth's first true ship of the stars. Elias stood on its bridge, staring down at the blue planet below. "We didn't start this," he said quietly to his second officer, Iko Tanaka. "But we'll finish it." She nodded. "They'll come back," he smiled faintly. "Then they'll find out how much we've learned." The Independence's engines flared, casting long shadows across the void. Humanity's first captured ship, now wholly their own, rose toward the stars that had once belonged only to others. It wasn't just a vessel anymore. It was a symbol of defiance, of survival, of the truth that no one would ever again take Earth's freedom for granted. And across the galaxy, in the grand chambers of the Council, the word soul began to spread like a warning. No longer a primitive world, no longer a number in the archives, but a power with teeth. End of Part 2. Part 3, the Council stood frozen. We'll bring the trial full circle and reveal how Earth's defiance reshaped the galaxy. Would you like me to now expand? Part 3 in the same epic HFY tone, about 1,000 words. Showing how Elias' trial changes galactic history? Perfect. Here's the full 1,000-word cinematic continuation and conclusion. Part 3 of You Invaded Earth. The Galactic Council stood frozen in disbelief. It's written in the same HFY epic, third-person, movie-style narration to complete the trilogy. Part 3. The Council stood frozen. The chamber of the Galactic Council had not been this quiet in 1,000 years. Even the air itself seemed to hesitate, waiting to see whether the universe was about to change. Captain Elias Vance stood, once again on the circular platform at the center of the Hall of Concord, but this time the air around him shimmered, not with restraint fields, only with light. The Council had ordered his bonds removed. Even they knew now that chains could not contain what he represented. Across the tiers, hundreds of delegates watched him. Some radiated anger, others confusion. And Afuthos, who had quietly suffered under Council rule, burned with a strange, dangerous hope at the highest dais. High Chancellor Taverin spoke first. "Captain Vance of Southry, your species stands accused of destabilizing 10 sectors, destroying Council property, and violating the accords of peaceful contact. Yet your people claim you were the ones invaded. Before we render judgment, you will explain your intent. Why did humanity fight? Why did you bring war to the stars?" Elias looked up into the crystalline lattice of the Chancellor's body. Light fractured through the alien's form and danced across the marble floor like frozen lightning. His reflection wavered within that light, a lone man among empires. He inhaled slowly. "Because you left us no choice," a murmur rippled through the amphitheater. But Elias continued before it could grow. "The message of Earth when your fleets came," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. "You didn't speak to us. You spoke for us. You said we were dangerous, that our technology was primitive, our societies unstable. You said you were bringing order? But order doesn't come from fire raining on cities. It doesn't come from calling conquest a reclamation. You taught us your definition of Passand. It looked a lot like slavery." A delegate from the Rith. Dominion slammed a clawed appendage against the bench. "Primitive worlds cannot be trusted with interstellar weaponry. You could have destroyed yourselves." Elias met the creature's glare. "Maybe we would have. But that was our decision to make. You don't get to play gods because we're not as polished as you." Another voice. A soft hum from the Zelthrosen challenge. "You murdered thousands of council citizens. How can you justify that?" He paused, eyes heavy with the weight of those memories. "I don't justify it. I remember it. Every ship we brought down, every life lost, it's all carved into us now. But we learned what you never did. Freedom is worth the pain it costs." The hall dimmed as if the stars outside the transparent dome had drawn closer to listen. The turning of the star's high chancellor, Tavern's inner light, flickered a sign of hesitation. "You believe humanity was defending itself? Yet in doing so, you ignited rebellion across the outer sectors. Systems once loyal to the Council have refused tribute. Entire worlds are in chaos. Do you call that victory?" Elias considered his answer carefully. "I call it truth. If one small world barely crawling out of its gravity well can shake your empire by simply saying no, then maybe the Council wasn't built on peace at all. Maybe it was built on fear." As that line landed like a hammer, delegates turned toward each other and murmured debate. Some flickered nervously, others leaned forward in silent approval. The Chancellor raised a hand for silence, but the whisper of dissent did not fade. It spread. Elias took one step forward. The guards at the platform's edge hesitated but did not move. "You came to Earth thinking you could rewrite us. Instead, you showed us what we already were. We didn't need your enlightenment. We needed a reason to stand together. You gave us that." He reached inside his tattered jacket and produced a small piece of scorched alloy, the same relic he had placed on the tribunal table. Its edges were melted, its surface engraved with human script. He set it gently on the glowing floor. The Council's scanners instantly magnified it for all to see. 2 words appeared on every screen in the hall: "Never again." Echoes across the Council, the words hung there, pulsing with quiet defiance. To the younger races within the chamber, it was a promise. To the elder ones, it was a warning. On the far tear, the representative from the insectoid Kiru clicked its mandibles in what its kind used as laughter. "You think the Council will let you keep your freedom, human? They will crush you for this." Elias' answer was almost a whisper, but it carried to every corner of the hall. "Then you'd better bring more fleets." A tremor of uneasy amusement spread through the audience. Even Tavern's glow brightened half in disbelief, half in reluctant admiration. "You truly believe your species can survive another war?" "We already have," Elias said. "We survived ourselves. Everything after that is just practice." That sentence struck deeper than any weapon. Because every being in that chamber, every empire, every species knew the truth. Most civilizations perished by their own hand long before they reached the stars. Humanity had not. Humanity had clawed its way out of extinction again and again. Stubbornly alive, the verdict that wasn't at length, Tavern spoke. "Captain Vance, the Council cannot condone rebellion. Yet neither can we deny what has been revealed. Records confirm that the Reclamation Directive was executed without full Council sanction. Certain members exceeded their authority." He turned slowly, addressing the assembly. "This chamber must decide whether humanity stands as criminal or sovereign." Silence fell once more, but it was not the silence of control. It was the silence before change, for the first time in living memory. The council did not know what to do. Some delegates demanded punishment. Others argued that the human example might ignite an age of cooperation rather than fear. The debate raged for hours, echoing through the halls of glass and stone. Elias said nothing. He simply waited. When at last Taverin spoke again, his glow had softened to a faint, uncertain blue. The council finds the Reclamation Initiative illegal. Earth is hereby recognized as an independent world under the Galactic Compact. Captain Vance, you and your people are free to choose your own path. Gasps, clicks, and low resonant tones filled the room. Some in outrage, others in relief. Elias exhaled slowly, not in triumph, but in quiet acknowledgement of the cost behind those words. He inclined his head, not a bow, but a gesture of respect. Then we'll build our own future. But remember this, Chancellor. If your fleets ever darken our skies again, we'll be ready. The man who spoke for Earth's secession ended, but no one truly left. Delegates lingered, whispering, recalculating the shape of their galaxy. When Elias stepped from the platform, the guards who once dragged him in now stepped aside. A few even saluted as he walked through the grand corridor toward the transport bay. He could see the stars through the transparent walls of the station. There, beyond the glow of the council's world, the black of space waited vast, unclaimed. Infinite waiting for humanity. At the docking ring, a familiar ship rotated into view. The Independence. Its hull still bore human steel patched over alien curves, its engines humming with a hybrid pulse. The first ship of Earth's new fleet. Aiko Tanaka waited at the airlock, uniform crisp, eyes shining with fierce pride. How'd the trial go, sir? Elias smiled faintly. Let's just say the galaxy's going to need a new rule book.
Hey!
They stepped aboard together. The doors sealed with a hiss, and the Independence drifted away from the station. Turning toward the blue-white swirl of hyperspace. Epilogue: The Fear of Gods back in the Grand Hall. High Chancellor Taverin remained alone, staring at the scorched metal plate still lying on the tribunal floor. Its 2 words glowed softly under the chamber lights. Never again. The Chancellor reached out, his crystalline fingers hovering above it, refracting the faintest flicker of something the Council had not felt in centuries' fear. Because somewhere, on a small blue world at the edge of a forgotten arm of the galaxy, a species had looked into the eyes of the gods and told them no. End of Part 3. End of You Invaded Earth. The Galactic Council stood frozen in disbelief. Would you like me to create a YouTube-optimized narration script version next with cinematic pacing, sound cue notes, and natural pauses for voiceover delivery?